Yeah, so I will show you what we know about the climate change and what we know about emissions and how are the energy issues. First of all, a few words about WMO. We are one of the oldest UN agencies, and we have almost all of the UN members as our members, and we are also the founding father of IPCC. We decided to found it in 1979, and the first report was published in '88. And we have a core team of UN who are advising Secretary General Guterres on his climate action, and I'm one of his climate principles. Next, please. And we have this World Climate Observing Systems, and we are also very much promoting related research, and then we are dealing with operational services, and we are observing the Earth system from satellites, ground-based measurements, ships, aircraft, and so forth. And about half of our members need assistance, and that's what we are also providing. Next, please. And we are running global centers for both the climate services and operational weather services. And in Europe, you happen to have the leading center in Reading, UK, European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, which is the best player in the world. And the Commission has been financing also Copernicus climate services, which are attached to that center. Because of Brexit, those activities will be moved to Germany, to Bonn, and but they are very important worldwide. Next, please. And now I will show you some slides about what we know about the climate system. All of the indicators in climate systems so far, they have been negative, and I will just demonstrate it to you. But there's also some hope, as I said in my opening remarks. Next, please. So this is what we have observed in temperature. We have seen a 1.2 degree warming so far, and last year wasn't the warmest year on record because we had fairly strong La Nina, which is cooling, especially the southern Pacific area. Otherwise, it would have been the warmest year on record, and this trend is very clear. Next, please. And last year was the warmest year on record in Europe, and we had extremely warm temperatures in Russian Arctic, which it was 5 degrees above normal. And as I said, we had this La Nina effect in southern Pacific, which was cooling that part of the world, but it had a negative cooling effect worldwide, and that's why we didn't break the all-time record in temperature. It's likely that it will happen this year. Next, please. And we have started seeing growing amount of heat waves, and they have been hitting also Europe, and this is statistics showing how many people worldwide are exposed to heat waves, and recently we have exceeded 200 million people on annual basis. And these weather events, they are also having impact on various diseases, and here I have listed some of those. Next, please. And what is more constant thing in atmosphere in the Earth system is what's happening in the oceans, and there you can see that there's a warming trend of the oceans. The heat content of ocean water has been going up, and you can see that we don't have such a variability there as we have in the atmosphere, and this is more constant factor, and we have stored more than 90% of the extra heat in the planet to the oceans. Next, please. And in greenhouse gases, we are breaking records year by year. Last year, we expected that there was a 5 to 7% drop in carbon emissions because of this COVID pandemic, but those days are over. We have returned back to this growth curve, and this 1 year's anomaly didn't affect the major trend. And second important greenhouse gas is methane, and the difference between carbon dioxide and methane is that that lifetime of carbon dioxide is very long. It takes even thousands of years to remove it totally from atmosphere once the concentration is high. But in case of methane, the lifetime is only 11 years. So basically, it's easier problem from that perspective. Next, please. And this is demonstrating which sort of gases behind the warming so far, and carbon dioxide has caused 2/3 of the warming, and methane 16%, and N2O, which is very much related to farmlands, we get 7%, and then we have these ozone depleting gases, which are also strong greenhouse gases. Next, please. And the fact that we have emitted more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, it has meant that we have also changed the chemical composition of oceans, because oceans serve as a sink of carbon, as also vegetation, and there have been some stories about geoengineering, that we could shade the planet, but we would still have this ocean acidification problem. So I'm not personally favoring these geoengineering techniques. Next, please. And perhaps the biggest impacts of climate change, they are felt through changes in precipitation patterns, and we have large parts of the world which are suffering because of water stress already today, and you can see all these reddish areas here, and for example, Mediterranean part of Europe is already suffering because of that, and we have such factors also in North America, in Southern Asia, and also in China. Next, please. And besides climate mitigation, it's very important to pay attention to population growth. We will see much more victims of climate change, especially in Africa and Southern Asia, and in the long run we will also see more consumers which are causing emissions if we are not able to control this population growth. And I would be happy to see European Union paying more attention to that factor. Next, please. Sea level rise, the estimations for this century are higher than they used to be. So now in the past, the conservative estimate was something like 30 centimeters to 70 centimeters, and now we are talking that it's between 0.5 meter and 1 meter is the conservative estimate. But if the Antarctic glacier melting takes place more quickly, then there's a risk to see even 2.5 meters sea level rise, and that's of course a challenge for countries like Netherlands. Next, please. And what's happening with the glaciers is that all of the glaciers worldwide are melting, and you can see that this melting has been speeding up during recent decades, and this is bad news for the rivers that are having their origin from glaciers in Asia, in India, China, for example. That's a challenge, but it's also a challenge here in Europe. If the amount of water in River Rhine, for example, is affected by melting of alpine glaciers, and that may be a problem for countries for shipping, and it may be a major problem for example Netherlands, which is having fresh water coming through that river. Next, please. Largest changes have been taking place in the Arctic, and in the Arctic we have more or less seen that the multi-year ice has disappeared. In the past we used to have plenty of 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old ice, but nowadays it's only practically 1-year ice, and we have melted already 75% of the sea ice mass since the 70s. Next, please. And this is opening the sea routes in the Arctic. In the 2040s, we expect that the Arctic would be ice-free during summer and early autumn, but winter will still exist. And there was some years ago there was a hype that there would be lots of activities in the Arctic, but this hype has a bit disappeared, and we have also seen that this geopolitics, especially related to Russia, has had a factor there. And of course we know that we have some fossil fuel resources in the Arctic, and if we are successful with the climate mitigation, then it may be that we are not going to use those resources, but we will see how it goes. Next, please. Then I will say something about disasters. We have started seeing growing amount of disasters, and the economic losses related to disasters, they have more than tripled during the past decades. And this was an estimation of World Economic Forum which was meeting 2 weeks ago. I was also one of the speakers there. And it's very likely that we will see extreme weather events that are having negative impact on world economy, and also failure in climate action would be also a major risk. And the new feature now, when you look at the right-hand side here, is that by impact, the diseases are now highest on the agenda, which wasn't the case during the past years. It was very much again these extreme weather events and climate action failure, which were driving that part of the risk. Next, please. Natural disasters worldwide. We have different disasters which are hitting different parts of the world, and here in Europe we have it's a department store of disasters. We have everything. We have storms, flooding, drought, and also earthquakes, and sometimes even volcanic eruptions. And Africa, for example, is very much drought related, and you can see also this hurricane and typhoon areas which are also dominant. And so in different parts of the world, the impacts of climate change, they are felt differently. Next, please. And if you look at the mortality of the people worldwide during the past 5 years, you can see that in Europe we have seen quite a bit of casualties, and they have been related especially to the heat waves, and the economic losses have been much smaller than, for example, in as compared to North America or Asia. In North America, hurricanes are the biggest factor, and Asia, it's mostly flooding and typhoons which are having effect. And in Africa, drought is the driver very much. Next, please. And during the past 20 years, more than half of the world's population, they have been exposed to major natural disaster, and flooding has been the most common one. Second is drought, and third one is other storms. So flooding is these water issues are dominating this scene. Next, please. And we have seen a trend, upward trend in the amount of disasters, and especially in the amount of tropical storms and also flooding events. And there's also a slight increase in the heat waves and drought events, as I have already said. Next, please. And we are publishing on an annual basis reports on the status of climate and its impacts, and this is an estimation of IMF, what this 1 degree warming has caused so far. And you can see that there has been a negative impact on GDP in Southern Hemisphere, and low latitudes in Northern Hemisphere, and the high latitudes in Northern Hemisphere. They have benefited from higher temperatures and growing amount of rainfall, and there's also less money needed for heating the houses, for example. Next, please. And I'm sure that you have seen these figures from the IPCC 1.5 degree report, which was demonstrating that it would be best for the welfare of the mankind to aim at reaching 1.5, and this is now very much on the political agenda. And if we should bend this emission growth curve in the coming 10 years to be able to reach 1.5 degrees and become carbon neutral by 2050. And if we would like to reach the upper limit of Paris Agreement, we have 20 years time to bend that curve, and we should become carbon neutral by 2070s. And if we don't do anything, we could reach 3 to 5 degrees warming by the end of this century, and major changes in sea level rise, and also major changes in precipitation patterns, which may have the even bigger impact than those temperature changes. And the other message from this graph is the fact that this negative trend in climate will anyhow continue until 2060s, and that means that we also have to be prepared to see growing amount of disasters and impacts of climate change anyhow, and we have to pay also attention to adaptation, and that's one of the things that we are also promoting as WMO. Next, please. And this is what might happen to global agriculture if we would reach 3 degrees, and this is to me the major risk related to climate change. How are we going to feed the growing world's population? And you can see these red areas where the crop yield is going to drop if we reach 3 degrees, and it's very large part of the world, and it's a part of the world where we are producing most of our current food. So these green areas which are benefiting from this change, they are not the best fitted for growth, and we couldn't compensate this loss in the red areas. So that's my personal main concern related to climate change. Next, please. And we have now means to estimate what's going to happen during the coming years. And one of our most recent results was that there's 24% probability that we will reach 1.5 degrees already during the coming 5 years on temporary basis, and it's very high probability that we will reach months with 1.5 degrees warming during the coming 5 years. That's not the permanent thing, but this is demonstrating that we are already fairly close to this 1.5 degrees. Next, please. And world is not going to even when it comes to warming. So if we would reach 2 degrees warming worldwide, it would mean 5 degrees in the Arctic and 7 degrees during the Arctic winter. And if we fail with the mitigation, the numbers would be even more dramatic. So this is demonstrating that in Northern Europe, for example, you have to be prepared for much higher changes than the global average anyway, and especially during the winter half of the year. Next, please. And then finally, I would like to show you some slides about emissions, which is of course the key political issue. And first of all, this is demonstrating what is the importance of fossil emissions when it comes to this carbon challenge, and what is the importance of land use. And in land use, it's about 14% for the past 10 years, and the rest is 86% is related to fossil carbon. So this is demonstrating that we cannot solve this problem by land use only. We have to pay most of our attention to use of fossil fuels, and as part of the Paris Agreement, countries have many countries, actually 90 countries have said that they will pay attention to this land use component, but that's not going to be the major solution of this problem. And in land use, the main challenge is that we use at the moment 75% of our farmland for feeding the cattle, and that's to me a little bit the crazy thing, and that's also a reason to consider your diet. Next, please. And in the forest sector, the main problem is related to the deforestation in tropical zones in Africa, in Southern Asia, and also in the Amazonian region. And the second problem that we have started facing is the fact that we have started seeing growing amount of emissions coming from wildfires. We have seen dramatic wildfires in Siberia, in Canada, and also in Sweden, and of course in California and Australia recently. And this graph is here demonstrating what has happened to the Arctic carbon dioxide emissions coming from the forest fires. So this is also one of the challenges when it comes to land use. Next, please. And this is demonstrating how we use energy worldwide, and this is energy used for energy, for industry, and also for transport sector. And you can see that 85% of the energy that we use worldwide is based on fossil sources, and only 15% is based on nuclear, hydro, or renewables. And that's our main challenge is to revert those numbers during the coming decades, to produce most of our energy based on nuclear, hydro, and renewables, and also save some energy and get rid of those fossil ones. And you can see that there's a steady growth curve, especially in consumption of oil and gas still. Next, please. And this is the similar figure for Europe, and you can see that the use of coal has been dropping, which is the right direction, but in consumption of oil and gas, we have started seeing growth after a drop, and that's not very good news. And this growth of the economy has also meant more private cars and related transportation. And the fact that the use of nuclear energy is dropping, it may have a negative impact in the other sectors. That's our challenge. But the good news is that this growth of renewable energy is fairly massive, and that's I think that's good news. And these are also the most profitable one. I used to serve in a Fortum energy company board, and there it was a vision that for example, wind energy is the most profitable one at the moment. Next, please. And this is your figure from European Commission, how to become carbon neutral by 2050. And this is a good way to demonstrate what is the importance of various factors. Sometimes we are paying attention to less important things, and we are not sticking to the essence. And this is also a good demonstration where we can really reach the emission drops and which are important sectors, but not the most important ones. And here you can see that power production, transport, and industry sectors are the most important ones. And it's also demonstrating what is the potential of carbon sink. And there's a slight potential for increase of the sink, but that's not going to be the major solution. It's sometimes thought, and the same is true for these carbon removal technologies, which is this reddish dashed area here. Next, please. And security policy is also one part of this question. And personally, as I said, this agriculture is a major victim of climate change. And in Europe, it's Mediterranean region, but you can see also other important regions, and this may also have an impact on refugee challenges that we have seen in Europe. World economy, it has been demonstrated already a long time ago by the Stern report and so forth, that it's 20 times cheaper to mitigate than to live with the consequences of climate change. And that's also true for countries like United States and Eastern Asia. Then this is not the easy case for oil and gas dependent economies like Russia, Arabic countries, and even Norway in Europe, and this is something that we have to also think. In Africa, the economies, employment, and the food security, they are highly dependent on agriculture, and this population growth is making the situation even worse. So that's a major challenge. And in Europe, as I said, Mediterranean region is the area which may suffer. We may have this immigration challenge, and we have already seen political impacts of the so far fairly modest refugee challenge. Next, please. And just to amuse you, there was already 1306 King Edward I prohibited the coal burning in London. So this is not a new thing in UK, which is going to host the next COP26. It's going to be most likely video conference meeting, but the expectations are great at the moment. Next, please. And one of the challenges worldwide is that we are using about 6% of the global GDP on global fossil subsidies, and that's also happening in Europe. And to get rid of those subsidies, that would be a very good way to help in solving this problem. And with fairly small money, we could solve this problem. A fraction of these subsidies, if it could be used for climate mitigation, we would be most successful. Next, please. And finally, a couple of slides about what is the role of various parts of the world when it comes to consumption of goods. In China, for example, the basis of the energy production is still coal, and that's their main problem. But the goods that they are producing are mostly in Europe and in North America. So the consumers also have a role there, and this carbon footprint of the products, that's an interesting question, and that may be one of the motivators behind China's interest to convert their energy systems as well. Next, please. And this is demonstrating how we use the fossil energy, and again, North Americans, Japanese, and Europeans are consuming most of those fossil sources, and this is also a big question when it comes to Russia and the recent sanction discussions. That's also something to be considered. Next, please. And finally, a couple of slides about air quality, which is partly related problem. This is showing where we have high concentrations of ultrafine particles, which are having negative impacts on human health, even brains. And in worldwide, we have, of course, high concentrations in Sahara. We have dust, but the polluted areas we can see in India, China, and in Europe, the most polluted area is Po Valley, and you can also see those coal-fired power plant countries in Eastern Europe where we have fairly high concentrations of ultrafine particles. Next, please. And this is another pollutant coming mostly from traffic, and you can see China is the worst place, but also some parts of Europe, where also Brussels is located, we have fairly high concentrations of those gases. Next, please. And there are plenty of pollutants which are coming from fossil fuels, and for countries like China and India, there would be a motivation to tackle both problems at the same time: the fossil carbon problem and the air pollution problem, and that's one of the motivators behind Chinese action, I would say. Next, please. And we have seen, of course, dramatic things in the past, and air quality in Europe in general is much improved, but it's still shortening the lifetime of Europeans even for several years in the most polluted areas. Next, please. So that's all from my side, and as a UN agency, we have this global perspective, but we are very grateful for Europeans, European Parliament and European Commission for your great action so far. Thank you.